Jump Show is back for another week. The boys are back in town. Jake Price, Dan Overall, and myself, looking ahead to the weekend's action and looking back as well. Before we begin, please do remember to like and subscribe. It does help us out a lot. And comment with your best bet or best fancy for the weekend's action ahead, whether it be Friday or on Saturday. Right, let's start by looking back, shall we? Lads, at what was quite a controversial in the end, I suppose, or at least a well-talked-about Charlie Hall chase, wherein Brave Man's Game, coming to the last fence, I think most thought he was going to go on and win, but of course went very long at that final obstacle and gave Gentleman's Game a big chance on the near side, and a chance that he took with open arms, because I think Brave Man's Game, in my view, was a very tired horse anyway, and in my view, wouldn't have won the race regardless. So let's get the thoughts of the actual experts, though, because that was just my take. Jake, start with you. It was an interesting race to watch, wasn't it?
Yeah, very interesting, as you say. I think we knew going into it that Brave Man's Game was obviously going to come on for the run. We knew that he wasn't there, going to be 100% tuned up. That was all factored into, even what we said in our preview of the race. So I think it was kind of run as I was expecting, and I don't think either of the first two came out of the race badly at all, to be honest. As we said, going down towards the last, Brave Man's Game was obviously travelling all over the eventual winner. But as we know, with Brave Man's Game, and as Dan's mentioned, flagged up on this podcast many times before, how much he finds in the finish can be subjective sometimes. And I think that Gentleman's Game was there. He'd had his prep run. He was there to win. They didn't really have anything in mind for him in the future. This was kind of, this is what they were going for, and anything else that happens afterwards was just going to come up naturally. There's nothing that he was prepping for. So I think Gentleman's Game came there, put in a brilliant performance. And I agree with you. I think no matter what happened at the last flight, I think Gentleman's Game probably would have gone and won, because he ended up pulling away and winning by 1 3/4 lengths. So it's not as if he's gone on and won by a head. I think eventually he probably would have got up after the last anyway. So yeah, I thought it was a great performance from Gentleman's Game. His third start over fences, and he's doing that as, even if he came second, it would have been a brilliant performance. So yeah, I think everyone comes out of that race well. The only thing I don't really agree with is if Brave Man's Game is really going to go for the Betfair Chase next, which Paul Nicholls keeps on refusing to rule out unless it's going to be soft ground, which I assume it probably will be soft ground anyway, but I think he should just go for the King George now, and that will be his best chance of picking up a Grade 1 this season.
Betfair sponsored Paul Nicholls may go for Betfair sponsored Betfair Chase. Oof. Oh, you don't have to be a genius to work out the PR spin on that one. No chance he goes.
We're not ruling out.
The classic, yeah. We're not ruling out. We're also just not saying he's going either.
Yeah.
The classic.
Yeah, it's a work in progress what we're going to do. Also, I heard the LTR boys. I heard them saying that at least one of them thinks that Gentleman's Game is a better horse than Jerry Colombe after that effort. I personally disagree. I think Jerry Colombe is going to turn into a more potent 3-mile chaser than Gentleman's Game. Dan, what do you make of the race? What do you make of those comments?
Well, Bridle Man's Game's back, isn't he? This is my gripe with this horse, and has been for ages. It's been going back long standing, as Jake mentioned. Like, I remember when he won that Newbury handicap of a massive weight.
Yeah,
he jumped the last 4 lengths ahead, stayed 4 lengths ahead despite getting scrubbed along to do so. That was the horse I was so keen to take on in the Brown Advisory. Obviously, he didn't end up running because of the soft ground. The Charlie Hall last year, he jumped the last about 4 lengths ahead of Sam Brown and Eldorado Allen, pushed along, found nothing extra, stayed about the same distance ahead. That's kind of what he has been, and that's again why I was so keen to take him on in the King George. The King George is the only race he's actually so far gone and found to win. Like, he was pushed along on the home bend there. Long Press looked to be kind of getting the best of the exchanges, and then he actually did find admirably for pressure that day. And that's what really turned me on to being a Brave Man's Game fan. Like, I thought, well, okay, this isn't just a bridle horse anymore. This is actually a horse who will find and will stay a proper 3 miles in a good race. And I think the Gold Cup was another example of that. He may not say 3 mile 2, but you can't say he didn't find for pressure that day either. I think it's just symptomatic of a horse who clearly wasn't 100% for the day. I think if he had to win, he would have had to win it pretty much on the bridle as he has his previous races. And Gentleman's Game was an admirable battler in defeat, in victory in the end, and showed a resolute attitude. Obviously, he was race fit, having finished behind Easy Game. A lot to like about that horse. Obviously, he's been seemingly riddled with issues because he hasn't been straightforward to train, hasn't had many races, but very talented on his day. Maybe a bit between a rock and a hard place now moving forward in terms of he's not really going to be running in handicaps probably, and he may not be quite good enough for grade ones, but very admirable horse. I don't think the connections are really seeing him as a threat to Jerry Colum based on what they're saying about various targets, but interesting race. No doubt Braveman's Game will improve bundles for it, and he's still the one to beat in the King George.
We should take a look back, shouldn't we? Not just at that race, but a segment I've really started to enjoy actually on this jump show is a horse to pick out from the last week, a horse that's really impressed us. And Dan, we might as well start with you for this. What's taken your eye the last 7 days?
I think Oroco was the performance that I think a lot of people are pointing to as being very impressive. Obviously, the horse I hold fondly after his Martin Pipe exploits. It showed, I think, more than I probably expected on his Chase debut in terms of the style of the performance. But I thought the second was one to take out the horse Paul Nicholls called Golden Sun. I think they'd made pretty clear that this was a horse they think quite highly of, but was not going to be 100% for today. I think in the Racing Post stable tour, he said he's been part of the Fat Boy Club or something similar to them over there. Like he's not a horse they was going to get ready at home whatsoever. I thought it jumped really well. Yeah, yeah, he did name check you in that as well. Actually, I'd like to see you go up those gallops. To be fair, that'll be a sight.
Yeah, I think that'll be a sight. Yeah,
coaching bully coming soon. But I thought Golden Sun showed a lot in this performance. Jumped well from the front, seemed pretty straightforward. Just tired late on. No shame in defeat to Oroco. I think obviously had a mark of 142 going into it. Can't imagine that's going to be changed based on that performance in a novice chase. He has had a start over fences in France, so that's his second run over fences. I think he'd be very interesting in a handicap moving forward. If they can find just a reasonable enough novice chase for him and get a victory there, and if he can go into a handicap off a mark 142, one of those 2.5 mile handicaps, maybe at Cheltenham in the Trials Day or maybe New Year's Day, may be of interest. But an interesting horse to keep on side for sure.
Okay, duly noted with that one. And Jake, what about you?
Yeah, I'll keep mine nice and brief, actually. If you haven't already, go and check out the Ascot bumper victory of Celtic Dino. He was sent off 7-2 favourite, so the market vibes were good. In the paddock, he looked like one of the nicest looking horses I think I've ever seen. And then he goes and produces a 4 1/4 length victory to boot. So I thought it was very impressive. Sam Thomas can't train a loser at the minute. He's since had another impressive bumper winner, Chepstow called Rocking Man as well. Two really outstanding prospects going forward. And yeah, I just think Celtic Dino is going to be a very good horse.
I think you were immediately transfixed, weren't you? Enamored by this horse, because as soon as he crossed the line on our WhatsApp group, you were kind of waxing lyrical. You were loving him.
It really was, but it was a decent bumper as well. You know, there's a 250 grand recruit in there. There was a 100 grand recruit in there. You know, it's some nice types, and he's absolutely destroyed them. So yeah, definitely one to take forward.
Yeah, for sure. Also, Dan, just on Oroco, you know, what have we said? Josh Guerriero and Oliver Green are like, these two are seriously making waves, aren't they? And they are a combination to very much look forward to. I think I might have put them up as trainers to follow actually this season on this podcast.
You're getting the trumpet out already.
God, yeah. He hasn't even mentioned like the likes of Botox has last weekend. I thought he would get that 5 seconds in and he'd start trumpeting on about that. Yeah. There you go. Don't worry, I did it for you. So now you look humble.
Mate.
It's a lie, but you look humble.
Do you know what? Actually, do you know what though? I should have, because actually it was a really good week for us, wasn't it? On the jump show last week, we had Botox. You guys had Knickerbocker Glory, and then even Marble Sands won. It wasn't necessarily a tip from me, but I did say
11-1.
And yeah, 11-1, yeah, off top weight. So I think that was a good performance actually. The one I wanted to put forward actually ran on Wednesday. Yes, that's correct. Around Wednesday, which is, of course, yesterday at time of recording. And that was Colonel Harry, who was my horse to follow for the season. Now, I had to mention him because he's my horse to follow for the season, so it would be remiss of me not to. Obviously, the race completely fell apart, and Tamuras was never going a yard. And then we all seen what happened with Out of Office and the carnage on Twitter that Evan Williams and Adam Wedge have both been receiving. That said, if you look at the winner, Colonel Harry, I was pretty pleased. I think he produced a really nice chasing debut, generally jumped pretty well in the main, was quite clever at a couple as well. And as soon as he was asked a question, I like the way that he galloped through the line. And as far as first runs go, I think it was the perfect pipe opener. Jake, what did you think of Colonel Harry?
I think it just goes to show when the jockey actually applies some pressure to the horse, they actually can find something. No, yeah, I thought he battled on well, and yeah, it was a satisfactory debut. I think
How
you have
dare
to
he, though?
improve.
How
Yeah.
dare he ask the horse to find on his novice chase debut? Do you have no respect for the horse? It's heavy ground at Chepstow. How dare you go to the race course to try and win?
No,
I'm
exactly.
baffling, honestly.
Just on to Muris, though, like, I mean, he wasn't, I would say, in love with the game. I mean, would you be willing to give him another chance over fences, Dan?
Not immediately. No.
No.
He needs to show a lot now. Back in the last season wasn't great either. So he needs to, show a bit of spark before I'm even willing to consider him as a betting proposition.
Yeah. And I would have said that heavy ground at Chepstow would have been like ideal conditions for his chase debut. So the fact that he's ran so poorly and not taking defensive at all, I think probably suggests that a lot of schooling is in order.
Let's move on then, shall we, to racing that's actually coming up. And we'll start on Friday at Exeter. There's a really good novice chase to enjoy there between, among others, Stay Away Faye and Grey Dawning. So looking forward to that. But the race we're going to feature is the 3:30 Betway Haldon Gold Cup, a Grade 2 limited handicap, and this year's field. Potentially not quite as exciting as it has been in the past. But then, that said, we're left with what is a pretty trappy and difficult affair to work out. Because, of course, you've got Editor de Gite of 165, carrying 11 stone 12, giving loads of weight away to all his rivals. Solo, Warlord, Brave Shaska, Indiana Jones, and Alexia Dunuts. Jake, what do you make of the race this year?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting down there, actually, Tom. And I think you're going to be presenting from the track, aren't you?
I can't wait. Yeah, it's a real thrill to be doing that, I have to say, for Racing TV. So I'm very much excited about that. And yeah, a race that I've always actually loved. I don't know what it is. I think it's because it comes at the time of year when you're kind of really getting into the swing of things before Christmas. And it's one of the big pre-Christmas races. So yeah, growing up watching that as a boy. So to be able to present with the Haldon Gold Cup is really exciting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you, Jake, as well. It'd be nice to catch up in person.
Exactly. Yeah. Looking forward to catching up. Yeah, as you say, it's not the best renewal. We've had, some great renewals down the years. This is definitely not up there with those. But as you say, it's an interesting race. I'm definitely on weather watch because currently it's soft, good to soft in places. There is rain forecast for this afternoon / this evening going into Friday. So I do want to watch and see what's happening with the weather. If it stays as it is, though, I do think that Solo's got a very good chance. He did win on soft ground on his first start last season, but I think, it's clear to see that his best performance by far was in the Pendle at Kempton in February. That came on good ground. He got a nice positive ride from Cobden that day. He absolutely winged every single fence, really quick over his fences, showed lots of speed that day and won over 2.5 miles. Great performance, beat That's Right Dino by a couple of lengths. Boot Hill was back in third. So I think he's got the ability to win a race like this. 2 mile, 1.5 furlong on a galloping track should be fine enough for him. I'd probably say 2.5 is his optimum, but he'll get away with this here on, as I said, a galloping track. And the thing that I found most interesting was that Cobden has come out in an interview and said that because this race is worth quite a lot of money, if he wins this, it will be like a season paid for, and then after that they can just potter around and find little races for him. So I think that he'll probably be quite tuned up for this. I'd imagine that they've had it as a long-term target. And yeah, as I say, as long as the ground doesn't get too soft, I'd be quite keen on him here.
Yeah, I mean, the winner gets 47 grand, which is no mean feat for a race on a Friday afternoon. Haldon Gold Cup, of course, has plenty of prestige, so good to see plenty of prize money. Dan, what do you think about Solo and the race in general?
Yeah, it's an open affair, as you can see in the opening markets. Obviously, only a couple of priced it up, but I think it's 10-3 the field and only a few points separating most of them. So it's an open renewal for sure, if lacking that real star quality. Maybe the G, if he's actually geared up, is capable of taking these apart, but there's a big if about that first statement. I think if I was going with a horse, it would be Solo. Obviously, I think Paul Nicholls has made no secret about the fact that this has been a long-term target and they haven't really looked beyond this race. Obviously, has a tremendous record in the race as well, goes well fresh. And I just think he might be a bit of a similar type to Pic D'Orhy in the sense that obviously had a big reputation as a younger horse. It's taken a bit of time for things to click. It started to come together towards last season, and they may just be getting to where they thought he could be now. And I think if he takes this, he's probably going to go down the Pic D'Orhy kind of route, like those kind of grade 2 races, the Peterborough Chases of the world, that kind of thing. I don't think he's a grade 1 horse, but I don't think there's necessarily a proper one in here, with the exception of Editor de Gite, who on his day can be. So yeah, if forced Solo, but open enough race, wouldn't have a massively strong opinion.
I think the race conditions probably favour Solo. I think he's the one to beat too, from my point of view. I would keep an eye on Brave Shaska. I know I split you guys off before we started recording about Brave Shaska, and having not really been kind of aware of this horse throughout the last year, kind of had to re-jog my memory. But I think he is on a good handicap, Mark. There's no doubt about that. And he's had a wind operation too, which could easily see him come back to form. And let's not forget, he was quite impressive when winning on his seasonal return last year. So Venetia will have him tuned up and offer a reasonable rating. He could be there or thereabouts, I think. But I agree with both of you. I think Solo is probably the one to beat. Cool. Let's move on to Saturday, shall we? And we're going to concentrate on Wincanton first of all, and the Rising Star Novices Chase over 2.5 miles. This year sees Nappers Hill a pretty hot favourite for this one. Jake, do you think it's as simple as he's just going to win?
Yeah, I kind of hope so. We were supposed to have quite a good field here because Mai Tai and JPR1 were both entered up, but neither have been declared. So it kind of paves the way for Nappers Hill to be a short price favourite, and I do hope that he goes in because it would be a nice form to a nice boost to the form of Unexpected Party. He obviously goes for the Paddy-Power Gold Cup next weekend. But yeah, Nappers Hill, he'll want the ground as quick as possible. And I think that's probably what's going to count against Captain Combi as well, because he'll probably be the one that comes for money. A lot of people will fancy him because he's coming over from Ireland, but he'll definitely want the ground as quick as possible. And as I said, that's just going to help Nappers Hill too. So I don't really see much of an angle there. I think Nappers Hill's the better horse, and if he builds on that debut, then he should win.
He should. I mean, he should win on everything we know about him so far. You know, official ratings wise, he's 13 pounds clear of Captain Combi, who's closest to him, and he's had that reappearance run to get the juices flowing behind him, as you say, behind Unexpected Party. So I think he's the one to beat too. Dan, what do you think?
I think it's impossible for me to have less of a betting interest in a race than I do in this one. Literally couldn't care less about having any kind of bet in it. I mean, I'm sure Captain Combi will be the one who comes for a bit of support. Personally, I think I'm more interested in the likes of Doyen Star, Gavega, and even Lady Adair, just to see how they run with a view to future races. Gavega in particular, I think, is going to be a decent staying novice chaser. Obviously, this is a tough introduction. I think I'll be having my eye probably on those towards the back of the field, to be honest, just seeing what can take out of it. If Nappers Hill can't be Captain Combi, then we really are in trouble over here, because Captain Combi has threatened to win many a good race and has yet to do so. So yes, watching brief only for me.
Yeah, we really would be struggling if Nappers Hill gets beaten by Captain Combi. Fingers crossed. Dan, one race that you might have a betting interest in, though, I imagine, is the Badger Beers, the 225 on Saturday, the 3 miles, 1 furlong. As always, really competitive stuff.
Yeah, I think this is a better race than last year. Frodon last year was a really strong pick for me. I thought just had conditions to suit, quick ground, no real front running angles other than him. I think Enrillo was 4 to 1 second favourite, which kind of tells you all you need to know about the quality of a staying chase, I'd say. The fact that he can go off so short would be a pretty damning indictment. Lord Accord was the only other one in there who came into the race in any kind of form. Everything else was regressive or had clearly other targets in mind down the line. Don't think that's the case this year. I think this is a stronger renewal, so I wouldn't be necessarily keen to go back to Frodon. I'm sure he'll run a fair enough race for long enough, but wouldn't be a betting interest for me. The one I do like is probably the one in here who actually progressed as opposed to all the others last season. That's certainly Red. I thought he was slightly overlooked in the market when it was open. I thought he was a 14 to 1 chance, which maybe was a bit unfair, maybe just looking at connections who aren't as well known. He's always been a horse with talent. They really struggled to get it out of him, but the start of last season, he went to Henrietta Knights to brush up his jumping, and it just all started to click from there. Won 3 handicaps in a row at the start of last season. 2 of those came over today's course and distance. In between that, he went to Sandown over 2.5 on soft ground, which would have been short enough for him on ground. I don't think he's necessarily in love with. I think he probably wants good to soft to be his ideal. He beat a horse called Gemarand, and he did it easily that day, staying on really well. He bolted up next time out and has placed in 2 top-level handicaps after that. Obviously, certainly Red is on a mark that is higher than his last winning mark, £5 higher to be precise. I think at the back end of last season, he ran the Bet365 Gold Cup. Was, I think, just towards the end of the season there. It wasn't his best run, but he did come into the race with a bit of a chance around 4 out, made a mistake 4 out, but then rallied again and made another mistake 2 out. I think still ran well enough in the context, and I think he's been given £2 back for that. And I think importantly, because I think he's a bit of a quirky type, Mark Goldstein now gets back on board. I think he's got a good rapport with this horse, and he's one of those I think just needs a bit of knowing. I don't think a Mark 140 in a race like this, I wouldn't necessarily think like deep winter ground kind of handicaps where horses are geared up would be his bag. But given his course record, I think this should have been his absolute main aim for the season, given how we know he will handle conditions. It's a track that suits. And I think a Mark 140 is winnable in a race that isn't going to be a top level handicap.
Do you know what? I can absolutely see it, to be honest, Dan. I mean, he's got that brilliant course and distance form, as you say, and then that reintroduction of Mark Goldstein, his 2 runs that weren't quite so good at the end of last season, he wasn't on board for, as you say. So, yeah, having him back on surely going to be a good thing. And I'm sure Lydia Richards, who is lovely, by the way, is going to have certainly ready to go. JK, I mean, you and Dan have kind of agreed on loads of things recently in handicaps that we've discussed on the Jump Show. Are you going to be going along in accord with certainly red, or do you fancy something else?
No, I see the case for it. To be honest, I've been going round and round in circles in this race. To be honest, I'm not that keen on it. I couldn't find anything at a decent price that I fancied or thought was well handicapped. And then towards the head of the market is the one I like, and that's 3 under 3.5. I mean, obviously, Paul Nicholls absolutely loves to target this race. He's got Frodon in it. I think, as Dan said, I think I'm happy to take on Frodon. I took him on last year. I'll take him on again this year, especially now being 12. And yeah, 3 under 3.5 is obviously just the younger horse who's down to a mark of 147 now, which I think is workable. He's had a wind up as well, which hopefully will help him out. And I think he's the type of horse who could turn into Paul Nicholls' new horse to go and win this race or target this race every year. Like he's the type of horse who's going to go up and trip again and run in, the Grand National type races. I think with those type of races, he's going to end up bumping into horses that are just better handicapped than him, and he will end up coming back down the handicap mark ready in time for another crack at this race next year. So yeah, I think off a mark of 147 with Harry Cobden aboard, I think 3 under 3.5 would be the pick. He's around 7-2 right now, so it's short enough, but around that price, I'd probably be happy to play. Obviously, any bigger would be great, but again, it is weather watch. I want it to be, at least good to soft in places if I'm going to be playing 3 under 3.5, because he is a horse who acts better on better ground and isn't seen to best effect on soft ground.
I've got to say I'm with you on this, Jake, in the fact that it's not an easy one to work out at all, and it's almost best left alone to some extent. But the one that I wanted to mention, I do think there is a big day in this horse, and it's Ballygriffin Cottage.
Oh, my old friend.
Well, funny enough, I went to Dan Skelton's before the 2022 Cheltenham Festival for a press day, and he kind of did the usual, like, Protectorate's got a good chance, kind of going through his best chances of the week, a few in the handicaps. And then he kind of stopped and had this little glint in his eye. And he said, but keep an eye out for Ballygriffin Cottage in the Albert Bartlett. I think he'll run above his odds. And he went off 28-1, came 4th. It was a good run. It really was. And he always did say that anything he does, the old horrible cliche over hurdles is going to be a bonus. Because he will make a chaser. So far, he's not made a chaser. He's won 1 race, beating Beauport 11 lengths quite impressively. That was on his first start back in November last year. Since then, he's been pulled up, and then beaten 34 lengths in 3rd of 3 at Newton Abbot on his return in October. So from what I've said so far, you're thinking to yourselves, I can't wait to go and back this horse.
I've actually just backed him for all my account on the back of that. It's just...
but there comes the rub. I do think there's plenty of ammunition left in his mark of 140. He's definitely a better horse than 140 when bringing his A game. Now, you can't be confident that he will do. There are a couple of reasons why he might. Now, he had a wind operation before his run last time, and he quite clearly needed it at Newton Abbot. I mean, he was all over the place and finished very tired. And, it was a 3-runner race. He was sent off 8-1. Clearly wasn't expected to be going to win that. At the time, I do think Dan Skelton's horses are starting to run a little bit better and finish off their races better too. Towards the start of the campaign, they weren't really doing that. And the other thing is, he's got loads of quirks. He's got loads of idiosyncrasies. And first-time cheek pieces, I think, going to make the world of this horse. I think he's always needed something to help him concentrate. And hopefully this will do just that. That's the 225, the Badger Beers, the big handicap of the day. There's another really interesting handicap to enjoy, though. That's a 332, which is a mare's handicap hurdle of a 2 miles 5.5 for 4-year-olds and above, class 2. Another one that's pretty tricky to try and work out here, Jake. But there is certainly, it's not quite as big a field, but there are certainly some horses you'd expect to be pretty, to be winning a fair few races for the rest of the season. I think there are quite a few nice unexposed types in there.
Yeah, I've got a much more stronger opinion on this race, actually, which is probably opposite to what most people have on Saturday. But I think that there's 2 horses I really want to back. So the first one is pretty obvious. It's the favourite, Paul Nicholls' favourite in the Richard Barber Memorial. What's New? Lime Avenue, I think she's just got an unbelievable chance, really. if you go back and watch her latest victory over course and distance in February in the novice hurdle, she has 2 reopposing rivals. She absolutely hacked up by 5 lengths, eased down. And, you know, that would be good enough to say that she's got a great chance here. But then Paul Nicholls comes out in his stable tour and says that she was making a noise for the final mile, and they've had to go straight for a wind up afterwards as well. So she should be coming on for the run in terms of improving just through experience, and she should be improving for that wind up. So off a mark of 118, I think she is going to take a lot of beating. I'll definitely be playing her. But a nice each way bet to nothing, I reckon, especially now we've got the dead 8, is Great Snow for Harry Fry. Now, she was with Neil Mulholland last season, and I think she got over raced in the end, really. She ran 7 times, but she finished second to Lime Avenue that day. So she was 5 lengths behind, and she's going to be £4 better off, which I don't think is enough to overturn that form just on that bare performance. However, she did go on to improve subsequently. She won a maiden hurdle at Ludlow, beating a rival now rated 118. And then she was third in the big grade 2 Mares Handicap Hurdle at Newbury, behind I Love the Nightlife, and she'll be £3 better off with her. As I said, I think she was over raced after that, so I'm happy to put a line ready for a second to Sabrina, and then when she got beat at Foss last. But she was picked up for 100 grand as part of the Walters Plant Hire dispersal. Opulence Thoroughbreds bought her and have sent her to Harry Fry, and this has always been the target for her. Ever since she went to Harry Fry, they've been targeting for this race. She's still available around 8 to 1. I think that's a great bet each way, considering she's got form lines with most of these, and she's better off at the weights with most of these. I do think the favourite will be hard to beat, but I think she's got a good each way chance.
You make a very strong case, actually, Jake, to be fair. I wouldn't have a huge take on this race myself. I'm just looking forward to seeing I Love the Nightlife this season. I did hope that she'd be sent over fences. Maybe they will go that way with her, because she's a really strong big type. And I'm sure they will at some stage. But I'm looking forward to seeing her return anyway. Dan, what do you think about this race?
In 2 words, bloody nightmare. I think most of these would have been aimed at the race. I think Vicky Vale's another one. She went off 11 to 1 for a shallow, I think, didn't she? And she's in here of 118, but she's absolutely mental. She's had a wind up. Live Avenue's had a wind up. Space Voyage, wind up, tongue tie. Great Snow trainer change. Plenty of time. One of the fences back over hurdle. It's an absolute nightmare. So I had a flyer on a big price because there's, as you say, 8 runners. It kind of appealed to me, and that's Good Luck Charm for Anthony Honeyball. Started last season off 115. They were very excited about her actually going over fences. I thought she had loads in hand off that mark over fences, and her debut pointing that to that being true. She split Kisses for Katie and Sky Ace off levels, and they were both rated about £25 higher than her. After that, I think she just started to sour a bit over fences. Just lost her way. Just didn't really happen for her. But if you go back to her novice hurdle campaign, she has some very good form. She'd be I Spy a Diva off levels. I Spy a Diva is now rated 130. She won a 20k Mares Handicap at Exeter of 112. So now down to a mark 107 because of a lackluster efforts over fences. She's a front runner, which I think was the main angle that I was really looking at here, because although Vicky Vale can go forward, if you read Mark Howard's book, they're very much on about getting her to settle and restraining her. They name check this race, but they want to drop her out. So that could give Good Luck Charm a 3 lead out in front. And if she can revert to the kind of enthusiasm she showed back in a novice hurdle campaign, she's handicapped to win if some of these aren't ludicrously well in, which they might be. But it's not a race I hold a massively strong opinion on. Anthony Honeyball won this race back in 2015 with a very similar type, in the fact that she had great novice hurdle form, went over fences, didn't really work out, brought her back to win this. So it isn't unprecedented. I think she's 22 to 1 currently with 8 runners. I think if she can maintain that price and we still have 8, I'll back her each way relatively small, but not a race I'm willing to get too stuck into.
Yeah, it's a tough old contest to work out, isn't it? Looking forward to that one, I have to say, on Saturday. The final race we're going to discuss is the 245 at Aintree. That is the Boyle Sports Grand Sefton Handicap Chase. Dan, at the moment, fingers crossed it actually goes ahead.
Yeah, it's. I think it's more likely to than not, I'd say. I mean, the predictions I saw, I didn't predict how that much rain coming. I think they're a bit cautious about that, but it's going to be testing whatever it is. And to be honest, it's a pretty terrible renewal, isn't it? Like, I mean, I know we got a few in here with form over the fences, but 11 runners in a Sefton. I mean, I couldn't tell you when was the last time we had that few. I haven't gone back and checked, but that seems ludicrously low to me. It's
that's 51 grand, isn't it? It's a big prize for the winning horse, and it just seems a bit of a shame. Yeah. I think with that in mind, like, well, personally, I can't see past the favourite myself, Guess Skill or Jess Skill. I think he's going to be really hard to beat. He's got such good form over the fences in the past. He's well handicapped. He's only a pound higher than when he finished second in the Beecher last season. And he made a fine return at Otoy last time, just getting home, but it was an excellent first-time run. So for trainers Oliver Greenall and Josh Guerriero, my favourites, I expect him to be really hard to beat. As simple as that, really, Dan, for me.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, he has standout form claims. He's going to be favourite, obviously. I think for me, I came down on Nassalam after toing and throwing a bit here. I think a part of it is if this was a conventional handicap over 2 mile 5 on heavy ground against these, he'd be 2-1 because I think he's a better horse than all of them. I think it's just a case of, obviously, the market is tending to prefer Aintree experience, which I understand, but I do think it can be overbet sometimes. So I was surprised when I saw Nassalam was as big as 10-1 even today with just 11 runners, because if you look at the races he's been running in, it's a caliber above and beyond most of these, in my opinion. If you go back to the Cheltenham races he was running in, probably the only time he got his ideal conditions last season was on New Year's Day at Cheltenham on an intermediate trip on soft ground. He was only beaten 3 lengths that day by Midnight River, won at Aintree, and obviously has the Coral Gold Trophy as his target. Stolen Silver was second, who bowled up at Chepstow. Il Rodotto was fourth, who then won the equivalent race on Trials Day. Shaker Parry finished 5th and was 3rd in a plate. Like, that is bomb-proof form in a race of this kind of context, in my opinion. Runs off the same mark. The fences are going to be a question, obviously, because it's first time over, and it is the jockey's first time riding over them, I believe, as well. But, I mean, Calvin Quinn had a good winner the other day, obviously, on Botox Has. Heavy ground is going to absolutely love it. Tends to go well, very fresh as well. I think the only time he disappointed was last season, but that was 2 miles on good ground. So I think going back up to 2 mile 5, which I think is probably his ideal trip, heavy ground. I think he's well handicapped to win a race like this. If he takes to the fences, I actually think it'll be pretty difficult to beat.
Very interesting comments there from young Daniel. And Jake, what do you think about the race?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you in terms of I really respect the favourite. I think heavy ground over the national fences are going to be optimum condition for him. He's up in the handicap. He's had a similar prep to last year. Definitely respect him. However, I know, Bully, you've been waiting all podcasts for me and Dan to agree on one. And here we go. Nassalam is going to be the agreement this week. I really don't have too much more to add to what Dan said, to be honest. He absolutely loves soft ground. The only time he's finished out of the 2, even on soft ground, was in that Cheltenham Handicap Chase on New Year's Day when he was 3rd, and then obviously in the Ultima as well, where I don't think he really stays 3 miles. However, he is obviously a really strong stayer at 2.5, so 2 mile 5 on heavy ground I think is going to be just optimum for him. And as Dan said, if this was over conventional fences, he would be miles the favourite. He's miles better than these in terms of raw ability over those type of fences. So if he takes to the national fences, then surely he's got a great chance. Okay,
on to other bets then. And although I don't really have a particularly strong fancy, I'm quite keen on Grey Dawning taking on Stay Away FA Exeter on Friday. Looking forward to seeing both those in action. But I think the Skelton horse could be extremely good over fences. So very excited to see that. Jake, start with you then for other bets.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't had a whole load of time since Dex to go through and go through every single card and find every single bet. But a few on my radar for you. So in the 105 at Kelso, Monochromics, he runs here. He was a good second to Dare to Sharpneck last time out. Steps up to 3 mile 2 furlong here at Kelso. I think that he has a great chance. In the 145 at Down Royal, I'm sure Dan will mention her as well, but Foxy Girl runs. Definitely think she's got a great chance off a mark of 123. And then the big one for me on Saturday, 2:15 at Kelso, The Legislator, one of my handicappers to follow, makes his chase debut off a mark of 115, just to remind everybody. 2 miles, 7.5 furlongs, novice handicap chase at Kelso. Lucinda Russell, Derek Fox on board. What is there not to like?
Yeah, and given the boost there from Jake as well, I think definitely worth keeping an eye on that one. Dan, what about you? Other bets for the weekend?
Yeah, so Dam Royal, as Jake mentioned, Foxy Girl would be one I'm keen on. A pretty decent race, I think. The Model Kingdoms, I think, is fairly enough handicapped of 127, but a few interesting types. But if she isn't better than 123, then I'd be pretty devastated. The Legislator, as Jake mentioned, would be keen on him. He may just be a short price. We'll see, because it isn't the greatest race in the world, so we'll just have to see. The race before that, the 140, Ned Tanner, I think, drops in trip back at his beloved Kelso. His Kelso form is absolutely rock solid. Beat Gitmaker on his first chasing win. He won his next 2. His next time at Kelso, he beat Latitude, who won his next 2 starts, and Flash Kalongs, who won next time out. Only £2 higher for that. I think dropping in trip back to Kelso after shaping well last time out. I think he's got a very, very strong chance in that race. And those would be my 3 extra bets.
Yeah, it's nice to have some concord between you two after some disagreements, some rare disagreements throughout the rest of the podcast. Looking forward to it then, lads, this weekend. It's some very interesting racing. And it should be some exciting horses in action. Haldon Gold Cup on Friday and of course on Saturday too. So really enjoyed that. Thanks very much for watching, everyone at home too. And please do remember to like and subscribe to the Jump Show, because as I say, it really does help us. And comment with your fancy for the weekend if you do have one. It'd be great to hear from you as well. Until next time though, on the Jump Show, from myself, from Dan and from Jake, it's goodbye.